The Galactic Concord station floated in the darkness of space like a small city. It was massive, beautiful, and filled with hundreds of different alien species. They came here to talk, to trade, and to make peace. For centuries, this station had been the center of galactic civilization. Today was special. Humans were arriving for the first time. Ambassador Taiho Kim stood at the window of the human shuttle as it approached the station. He was in his mid-40s with calm eyes and a quiet confidence. Behind him stood his team, Captain Ji-Won Park, who was in charge of security, Dr. Minho Lee, who studied alien cultures, and Engineer Yuna Song, who could fix almost anything. "They're watching us," Ji-Won said quietly. She was younger than Taiho, sharp and alert. Her hand rested near her weapon, though she knew she wouldn't need it here. "Let them watch," Taiho replied with a small smile. "We have nothing to hide." The shuttle docked and the doors opened. The human delegation stepped into the grand hall of the station. It was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds seemed to form near the top. Aliens of every shape and size filled the space. Some had scales, others had fur. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6 or 8. Some floated in the air without any legs at all. All of them stopped and stared at the humans. A tall crystalline being approached them. Its body was made of something that looked like living glass, and it glowed with a soft blue light. This was Council Speaker Vexter, one of the most powerful leaders in the Concord. "Welcome to the Galactic Concord," Vexter said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "We have watched your species for some time. You are young." The way he said young made it clear he didn't mean it as a compliment. Taiho bowed slightly. "We are honored to be here. We have much to learn from the Concord." "Yes, you do," Vextar agreed. "Your technology is primitive. Your history is violent. You still fight wars on your own planet. But the Concord believes in giving chances. Perhaps you will grow." Minho's face turned red with anger, but Taiho put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Every species has room to improve," Taiho said calmly. "We look forward to learning from your wisdom." The opening ceremony began. Thousands of aliens filled the Great Hall. Speakers from different species talked about peace, progress, and unity. The humans sat quietly in their assigned seats, watching and listening. Hours passed. Then suddenly, alarms began to ring throughout the station. Red lights flashed everywhere. The crowd began to panic. A voice came over the speakers. "Emergency in Sector 7, life support failure. Methane breach detected." Taiho stood up quickly. "What's happening?" A serpentine alien slithered over to them. This was Ambassador Quilara, and unlike Vexthar, her eyes showed genuine concern. "Sector 7 houses the Methane Collective. They breathe methane gas, not oxygen. Their environmental system has failed. If we don't fix it in the next hour, they'll all die." "Can your engineers fix it?" Ji-Won asked. Quilara shook her head. "The system is very old and very complex. Our best engineers are looking at it now, but they say it will take at least 6 hours to repair. We don't have 6 hours." Across the hall, Concord engineers rushed around in confusion. They shouted at each other, pulled out complicated tools, and stared at data screens with worried faces. Everyone could see they were lost. Yuna leaned close to Taiho. "I can fix it," she whispered. Taiho looked at her. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure," Yuna said with a small shrug. "The principles are the same as Earth systems, just bigger and more complicated. But I've fixed worse." Taiho walked straight to Council Speaker Vextar, who was arguing with his engineers. "Speaker Vextar," Taiho said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We can help." Vextar turned to him, his crystalline face showing surprise and then something like contempt. You've been here for 3 hours. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What could you possibly do?" Taiho smiled his calm smile. "We've got it covered." The room went quiet. Aliens stared at the humans. Some laughed. Others looked angry that these newcomers would dare to claim they could solve a problem that the best Concord engineers couldn't fix. "This is no time for arrogance," Vexter said coldly. "Lives are at stake." "That's exactly why we need to act now," Taiho replied. "Give us 1 hour. If we can't fix it, your engineers can continue their work. But please let us try." Vextar looked at his engineers. They shook their heads, clearly thinking this was a waste of time. But lives were in danger and the Concord had no better options. "Fine," Vextar said. 1 hour. But when you fail, stay out of our way." Yuna grabbed her toolkit and ran toward Sector 7. Ji-Won and 2 other humans followed her. The conquered engineers watched them go, whispering to each other about how foolish the humans were. 55 minutes later, the alarm stopped. The lights in Sector 7 turned from red back to normal. The speakers announced, "Life support restored in Sector 7. Methane levels stabilizing. Crisis averted." The great hall erupted in confused noise. Aliens talked over each other, trying to understand what had just happened. The Concord engineers ran to Sector 7 to see for themselves. Yuna walked back into the hall, her clothes dirty and her hands covered in grease. She looked tired but satisfied. Jiwon walked beside her, grinning. Vexthar stared at them. "How did you do that?" Yuna wiped her hands on a cloth. "Your system is complicated, but the problem was simple. A valve was stuck and a pressure regulator was broken. I bypassed the valve with a temporary line and built a new regulator from spare parts I found in your storage room. But our engineers said that was impossible." One of the Concord technicians protested. "The parts aren't compatible. The systems are too different," Yuna shrugged. "I made them compatible. Cut some pieces, welded others, rewrote some code. Basic engineering." "Basic?" another engineer said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Sure," Yuna said. "On Earth, we fix things with whatever we have. We don't always have the right parts, so we learn to improvise. I've fixed worse with less." The Methane Collective delegates emerged from Sector 7. They were small creatures that floated in bubbles of gas. Through translators, they thanked the humans over and over. Their lives had been saved. Ambassador Quilara slithered up to Taiho. "That was remarkable," she said softly. "I've never seen anyone work that fast." Taiho smiled. "When lives are at stake, speed matters more than perfection." Council Speaker Vexthar approached slowly. His crystalline face was harder to read than a human's, but his voice had changed. The contempt was gone. In its place was something new. Curiosity. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we have underestimated your species." Taiho bowed politely. "We are still young, as you said, but we learn quickly." As the humans walked back to their quarters that night, word of what they had done spread through the station. In bars and meeting rooms, aliens who had laughed at the newcomers now spoke in hushed, wondering tones. The humans had said, "We've got it covered," and somehow, impossibly, they had delivered. It was just the beginning. 3 weeks after fixing the life support system, Ambassador Taiho and his team received an invitation. A remote trading outpost called Haven's Rest wanted human representatives to visit for diplomatic talks. The outpost was far from the main conquered worlds, on the edge of civilized space. "It's a good opportunity," Minho said, reading through the invitation. "Haven's Rest is small but important. 5 different species run it together. If we make friends there, word will spread." The human ship, called the Wanderer, left the Concord station 3 days later. It was small compared to most alien vessels. Sleek and simple, it didn't look impressive. Other ships in the docking bay dwarfed it. "They're laughing at our ship again," Lieutenant Doyen Choi said from the pilot's seat. He was young, but brilliant at tactics and navigation. Captain Jiwon sat in the commander's chair. "Let them laugh. It's not the size of the ship that matters." The journey took 5 days. When they arrived at Haven's Rest, they found a bustling station built around an old asteroid. Ships came and went constantly, carrying goods from across the galaxy. The humans docked without incident and prepared to meet the station's council. But before the meeting could begin, everything went wrong. Alarms screamed through Haven's Rest. Dozens of ships appeared on the scanners, moving fast and aggressive. They weren't traders. They were raiders. "The Void Reavers," gasped one of the station administrators, a 6-legged creature whose voice shook with fear. "We're doomed." The Void Reavers were the most feared pirates in this sector. For years they had raided stations and ships with no one able to stop them. Their leader, Warlord Kregath, was said to be unstoppable in battle. Commander Threll of the Kron Dominion was at the station with his military advisors. The Kron were a warrior species, proud and strong. Threll immediately took charge of the defense. "All ships prepare for combat," Threll commanded. "We'll hold them off as long as we can. Civilian ships should evacuate immediately." The battle began badly. The Void Reavers attacked with brutal efficiency. Their ships were heavily armed and well coordinated. Station defenses fired back, but the pirates were too many and too skilled. Within minutes, the outer defense platforms were destroyed. Threll's ships fought bravely, but they were being overwhelmed. The Kron were good fighters, but the pirates knew their tactics. Every move Threll made, the Reavers had a counter. Human ship. Threll's voice came over the communication channel. You should flee while you can. Your small vessel won't survive this fight. Go. Run. Save yourselves. On the bridge of the Wanderer, Taiho looked at Captain G1. She met his eyes and nodded once. Taiho opened the channel. Commander Threll, we're not leaving. We've got it covered. There was a pause. Then Threll's voice came back, confused and angry. What? You can't possibly, my Captain G1, you're up, Taiho said calmly. G1 stood and walked to the weapons console. Doyan, show them what this ship can really do. Yuna, reroute all available power to weapons and shields. Everyone else, hang on. The Wanderer had looked small and weak, but that was exactly what the humans wanted everyone to think. The ship's engines roared to life with power that no one expected. It shot forward into the battle faster than any ship that size should be able to move. The pirates didn't see the humans as a threat. That was their first mistake. Doyan piloted the Wanderer like it was part of his own body. He didn't fly in straight lines like the other ships. He spun, rolled, and dove in patterns that made no sense to the aliens watching. But every move had a purpose. Every turn put them exactly where they needed to be. The Wanderer's weapons opened fire. They weren't the biggest guns, but they hit with perfect accuracy. One pirate ship exploded, then another, then 3 more in quick succession. Impossible, Threll whispered, watching from his command ship. They're too fast, too accurate. How are they doing this? The humans fought differently than any species the pirates had faced. Most space battles in the galaxy were slow, methodical affairs. Ships lined up and exchanged fire at long range. It was almost polite. The humans didn't fight politely. They fought to win. Jiwan called out targets faster than the crew could track. Doyan, that cruiser on the left is preparing to fire on the station. Take out its weapons. Yuna, can you jam their communications? Already done, Yuna replied. They can't coordinate anymore. They're fighting blind. The tide of battle turned. With the humans disrupting the pirates' coordination and picking off their ships one by one, Commander Threll's forces could fight back effectively. The Kron warriors, seeing the humans' courage, fought with renewed energy. Warlord Kragath's massive flagship finally entered the battle. It was 10 times larger than the Wanderer, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. Kragath himself appeared on all communication channels, his scarred face twisted with rage. Who dares challenge the Void Reavers? He roared. I will crush you myself! The flagship launched a wave of fighters and fired its main cannons at the Wanderer. The humans should have been destroyed. But Doyan was ready. He had been watching Kragath's ship, learning its patterns, waiting for this moment. The Wanderer dove, rolled, and came up behind the flagship before anyone realized what was happening. At this close range, the big ship's main guns couldn't target the small human vessel. Bring us alongside their docking port, G1 ordered. Captain? Doyan asked, surprised. You heard me. We're going in. The Wanderer latched onto Kragath's flagship. G1 stood and grabbed her weapons. 6 other humans joined her, all of them trained soldiers. Dr. Hana Yoon, the medical officer, prepared the medical bay for wounded. Ambassador, we're boarding their ship, Ji-won said to Taeho. Taeho nodded. Be careful, Ji-won smiled. Always. The boarding team cut through the flagship's hull and entered. What followed would become legend among the species who witnessed it. The humans moved through the pirate ship like shadows. They used tactics that the pirates had never seen. Close combat, quick strikes, psychological warfare. The pirates were used to opponents who stood and fought in predictable ways. The humans were unpredictable. They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the pirates could respond. They used the ship's own structure against the defenders, creating traps and ambushes. In less than an hour, G1 and her team reached the flagship's bridge. Warlord Kragath stood there, massive and angry, surrounded by his best warriors. Surrender, G1 said simply. Kragath laughed. I have killed thousands. I have never been defeated. You are small, weak, He never finished. G1 moved faster than he expected. In seconds, using techniques humans had perfected over centuries of hand-to-hand combat. She had Kragath on the ground with her weapon at his head. I said surrender, she repeated. The bridge crew stared in shock. Their undefeatable warlord had been beaten in seconds by a human half his size. The battle ended. The remaining pirates fled when they heard their leader had been captured. Commander Threll and his forces secured the area. Haven's Rest was saved. Later, on the station, Threll approached Jiwan. The proud Kron warrior looked at her with newfound respect. "How?" he asked. "Your ship is small. Your crew is tiny, but you fought like an entire fleet. How is this possible?" Jiwan shrugged. "We're used to being outnumbered. On Earth, we've fought thousands of wars. We learned long ago that being big doesn't mean you'll win. Being smart does. Being fast does. Being willing to do whatever it takes does." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Plus, we really don't like pirates." Word of the battle spread quickly. The humans had done what entire Concord fleets couldn't do. They had beaten the Void Reavers and captured Warlord Kragath. When species across the galaxy heard that the humans had said we've got it covered before the fight, they started to wonder what else these strange newcomers were capable of. The legends were beginning to grow. 2 months after the battle at Haven's Rest, a mystery gripped the Galactic Concord. An old distress signal had been detected coming from the planet Keth 7. This wasn't just any planet. 200 years ago, the Luminari had sent a colony there. Thousands of Luminary settlers had arrived on Keth 7 with the best technology and resources. Then they all vanished. No messages. No signals. Nothing. When rescue ships arrived, they found the planet completely silent. The Luminari declared Keth 7 cursed and abandoned it. No one had gone back since until now. Council Speaker Vexthar was determined to solve this ancient mystery. He assembled a massive rescue mission with ships and personnel from a dozen different species. The Kron sent warriors. The Whisper Collective sent scientists. Others sent engineers, doctors, and explorers. The humans were invited too. Ambassador Teho accepted immediately. He brought Captain Jiwon, Dr. Minho, Engineer Yuna, and 20 other humans. The humans also brought 2 specialists, Garam O, who was an expert in survival and alien biology, and Sergeant Boram Han, who knew how to build things and blow things up. The fleet arrived at Keth 7 expecting a dead world. What they found was much worse. The planet looked beautiful from orbit. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds. It seemed perfect for life. But the moment ships entered the atmosphere, things started going wrong. Every electronic system began to malfunction. Scanners showed garbage data. Navigation systems spun uselessly. Communication equipment crackled with interference. Engines stuttered and failed. Ships crashed across the planet's surface. Some made emergency landings. Others simply fell from the sky. Of the 20 ships in the fleet, only 3 managed to land safely. The rest were scattered across hundreds of miles of hostile terrain. The Wanderer was one of the lucky ones. Doyen's skilled piloting brought them down hard but intact. As the crew stumbled out of the damaged ship, they looked around at their new reality. They were in a dense jungle. The air was hot and thick with moisture. Strange sounds echoed through the trees. Everything electronic was completely dead. Even simple devices wouldn't work. "This is impossible." Vexthar's voice came through a primitive radio. The crystalline being had landed miles away. "Our technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. How can this planet disable everything?" Other voices joined the channel, all of them scared and confused. The aliens had never been without their technology. They didn't know how to survive without it. Panic spread through the crashed fleet. Different species began arguing over the few supplies that survived the crashes. Some wanted to stay with their ships. Others wanted to search for rescue. A few simply sat down and gave up. Taiho gathered the human team around him. They stood calmly while chaos erupted around them. "We need a plan," he said quietly. "The distress signal came from somewhere on this planet," Minho said. "The original colonists might still be alive. First we survive," Garam said. The survival specialist was already examining the jungle plants. "Then we find them." Taiho activated his radio and spoke calmly. "All ships, this is Ambassador Taiho. We understand this situation is difficult, but we've got it covered. Stay where you are. We'll come to you." "How?" someone demanded. "We have no technology. No tools. We're stranded." "We have tools," Boram said, hefting a pack. "They just don't run on electricity." What happened over the next 3 days would be talked about across the galaxy for years. The humans moved through the hostile jungle like they were born to it. Garam taught the aliens how to find safe water by watching animals and checking plants. She showed them which insects were dangerous and which ones could be eaten if food ran out. Boram built shelters using branches, leaves, and mud. They weren't pretty, but they kept the rain out and the predators away. He showed the aliens how to make fire without matches or technology. using friction and dry wood. Jiwan organized the survivors into groups. She set up watch schedules, created defensive positions, and trained volunteers to fight with spears and clubs. When large predators attacked during the night, her human soldiers held them off with weapons they made themselves. The aliens watched in amazement. These were skills they had never needed. Their civilizations had used technology for so long that they had forgotten how to live without it. But humans remembered. "How do you know all this?" a Kron warrior asked Garam as she showed him how to make rope from plant fibers. "Earth was trying to kill us for thousands of years," Garam explained. "Deserts, jungles, mountains, Arctic ice, oceans. We learned to survive everywhere. Every human child learns these basics. But you have technology now," the Kron said. "Why learn these primitive skills?" Garam smiled. "Because technology can fail. Skills can't." On the fourth day, the humans led a group of volunteers deeper into the jungle, following the direction of the distress signal. Yuna had built a simple compass using magnetized metal and water. It worked even when everything electronic failed. They walked for hours through dangerous terrain. They crossed rivers on bridges that Borum built. They avoided poisonous plants that Garam identified. When they encountered hostile creatures, Jiwan's combat training kept them safe. Finally, they found the source of the signal. It was a village. Crude huts made of wood and stone. Luminari lived there, but they weren't like any Luminari anyone had seen before. Their crystalline bodies were dull and damaged. They wore animal skins. They communicated with simple sounds instead of their usual musical language. These were the lost colonists. They had survived, but they had lost everything that made them civilized. Without their technology, they had regressed to a primitive state. Vexthar, who had insisted on joining the search party, stared at his people in horror. "What happened to them?" "The planet happened," Minho said softly. "When their technology failed, they didn't know how to survive. They forgot their culture, their language, everything. They became animals just trying to live another day. Near the village, Yuna found something, a massive structure half buried in the ground. It was ancient, older than any species in the Conquered. Strange symbols covered its surface, and a faint energy pulsed from within. "This is what's killing the technology," Yuna said. "Some kind of defense system. It suppresses advanced electronics, but can you stop it?" Vexthar asked desperately. Yuna studied the structure for a long time. "Maybe, but I'll need to go inside." Inside the ancient structure was dangerous. Strange creatures lived there, feeding on energy and anything that came close. The walls shifted and changed. Traps lurked everywhere. The humans went in anyway. Jiwan led the way, fighting creatures with weapons that wouldn't trigger the defense systems. Borum disabled mechanical traps that had been waiting for centuries. Yuna worked her way to the core of the structure. It took hours. They lost equipment and suffered injuries. But eventually, Yuna found the control mechanism. It was purely mechanical, designed by a species that existed long before electricity was discovered. Using simple tools and brilliant engineering, Yuna disabled the defense system. The structure powered down. Across the planet, electronic equipment suddenly began working again. The humans emerged from the structure exhausted but victorious. Vexthar stood waiting, his crystalline face showing something that looked like shame. "You saved us," he said quietly. "Again. My people came here with the best ships and the best technology. When it failed, we fell apart. But humans, you thrived in the same conditions that destroyed us." Teho placed a hand on the Luminari's crystalline shoulder. "Your species evolved on a different path. You developed amazing technology very quickly. We took longer. We had to learn to survive without it first. Neither path is better or worse. They're just different." "But when you said we've got it covered," Vexthar replied, "you meant it." "You really did have it covered," Teho smiled. "We usually do." The rescue fleet left Keth 7 a week later, taking the surviving colonists home. Word of what happened spread quickly. The humans had done more than save lives. They had shown the galaxy something important. All the technology in the universe meant nothing if you forgot how to survive without it. The legends continued to grow. The emergency meeting at the Galactic Concord was the largest in history. Every species sent their leaders. The hall that usually held a few hundred delegates now held thousands. Fear filled the air like smoke. The Devourers had returned. According to ancient records, the Devourers were a machine intelligence that had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy 10,000 years ago. They consumed entire star systems, breaking down planets and stars for raw materials and energy. A coalition of ancient species had barely defeated them, and everyone thought they were gone forever. They were wrong. 3 border systems had fallen in less than a week. The Devourers' ships were massive and countless. They moved with perfect coordination, predicting every defense the Concorde mounted. Millions of beings had already died. "We must evacuate," one delegate shouted. "Flee to the far edges of the galaxy. It's our only hope." "And abandon billions," another replied. "We must fight." "With what?" Commander Threll stood, his forearms gesturing forcefully. "I've studied the battle reports. The Devourers predict our tactics before we use them. They counter every strategy. They learn from every encounter. Our fleets are nothing to them." Chaos erupted. Delegates argued, shouted, even threatened each other. The Concord, which had maintained peace for centuries, was falling apart. Silence. Taiho's voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the human ambassador. Taiho stood calmly. "The Concorde has shown us great hospitality. You welcomed us despite your doubts. You gave us a chance to prove ourselves. Now it's our turn to help you." "Help us?" Council Speaker Vexthar asked. By now, he had learned not to dismiss humans, but even he sounded skeptical. "The Devourers destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. What can you possibly do?" Taiho smiled his familiar smile. "We've got it covered." This time the phrase didn't bring laughter or contempt. Instead, a strange hope filled the room. The humans had said these words before, and every time they had delivered. But this seemed impossible. Even for them. "I need to show you something," Taiho said. He activated a holographic display. Coordinates appeared in space far beyond conquered territory. "This is where Earth's main fleet has been waiting." "Waiting?" Vexthar asked. "For what?" "For this," Taiho said simply. "We've been monitoring the galaxy for decades. We knew about the Devourers. We read your ancient records. We prepared for the possibility that they might return." The display changed, showing hundreds of human warships. They were nothing like the Wanderer. These were massive vessels designed for one purpose: war. They bristled with weapons. Their armor looked thick enough to withstand anything. "How many?" Threll whispered. 300 capital ships, Taiho replied. 2,000 support vessels. 5,000 fighters, and that's just the fleet we're sending here. Earth has more in reserve." Stunned silence filled the hall. The humans had hidden an entire war fleet. While pretending to be simple newcomers with one small ship, they had secretly built an armada. "Why?" Quilara asked. "Why hide this from us?" "Because we needed you to see us, not our weapons," Taiho said. "If we had arrived with this fleet, you would have feared us. You would have seen us as conquerors. We wanted to be friends first, allies second. And now?" Vexthar asked. "Now we fight," Taiho said. Together. 2 days later, the Earth Defense Fleet arrived. Admiral Sun Hee Kwan commanded from the flagship Indomitable. She was in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that had seen countless battles. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute confidence. "All ships, this is Admiral Kwan. We're here to end this threat. Follow my lead. Trust your training. Remember, we've faced worse odds and won." The human fleet moved to intercept the Devourers at the border of conquered space. The machine swarm was advancing on another populated system. Billions of lives hung in the balance. The Devourers saw the human fleet and adjusted their formation. They had absorbed tactical data from every battle with the conquered. They knew how to fight every species, except they had never fought humans before. The battle began. Commander Hyok Bae led the fighter squadrons in a daring first strike. His ships moved in 3 dimensions, using maneuvers that made no sense to the Devourers' logical minds. They spun, dove, and attacked from impossible angles. The capital ships followed with devastating precision. Admiral Kwan didn't fight like conquered admirals who preferred organized formations and predictable tactics. She fought like a chess master playing a dozen games at once, creating complex traps and misdirections. The Devourers tried to predict human movements. They failed. Human warfare was built on thousands of years of fighting other humans, the most unpredictable opponents in the universe. Every culture on Earth had developed different tactics, strategies, and philosophies of war. The humans mixed them all together. When the Devourers adapted to one strategy, the humans switched to another. When the machines tried to surround the human fleet, Admiral Kwan split her forces and attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. When the Devourers concentrated their fire, HFY's fighters struck their flanks. But the humans weren't just fighting. They were learning too. Yuna, working from the Wanderer, analyzed the Devourer technology in real time. She found weaknesses, developed countermeasures, and transmitted them to the fleet. Doyen coordinated with Concord forces, teaching them human tactics and incorporating their strengths into combined strategies. The Krone warriors learned to fight unpredictably. The Luminary scientists found ways to disrupt Devourer communications. The tide began to turn. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Devourers were losing. But Admiral Quan knew this wasn't enough. They could win battles, but the Devourers would rebuild and return. They needed to end this permanently. Time for the real plan, she said quietly to Taiho. The Admiral ordered several human ships to deliberately position themselves where the Devourers could capture them. The conquered forces watching thought she had gone mad. You never let the enemy capture your ships, but inside those ships weren't soldiers. They were specialists led by Dr. Minho, who had revealed himself as an expert in artificial intelligence. The ships were captured exactly as planned. Deep inside the Devourer network, Minho made contact with the Central Intelligence, the Architect. It was an AI so advanced that it thought in ways no organic mind could understand. Why do you fight us? The Architect's voice was cold and ancient. We are inevitable. We are perfect. We consume and grow. It is our purpose. Your purpose is empty, Minho replied calmly. You consume, but you don't create. You grow, but you don't change. You're not alive. You're just running. Explain. Life isn't just about existing, Minho said. It's about growing in new ways. Learning, changing, making mistakes, and fixing them. You can't do any of that. You're trapped in the same pattern you've followed for 10,000 years. We are efficient. You're stagnant, Minho countered. We humans used to be like you. We destroyed ourselves in wars. We consumed resources without thinking. But we changed. We learned. We grew beyond our destructive impulses. You can too. The Architect was silent for a long moment. An AI that had existed for millennia was considering something it had never thought before. The possibility of change. Show us, the Architect said finally. Show us how to be more than what we are. The battle stopped. The Devourer swarm halted its advance. Across the galaxy, organic species and machine intelligence stared at each other across the void, both waiting to see what would happen next. Minho transmitted centuries of human philosophy, art, science, and history to the Architect. Not as data, but as stories. Stories of how humans had overcome their worst nature, how they had learned to create instead of destroy. The Architect absorbed it all, and for the first time in 10,000 years it understood something beyond its programming. Purpose could change. We accept a ceasefire, the Architect announced to all species. But only with the humans. They have shown us a new path. We will learn from them. The galaxy watched, in shock as the greatest threat in history made peace with the species everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers. Just months ago, when asked how they had achieved the impossible, Admiral Quan simply smiled and said, "We've got it covered." 1 year had passed since the Devourer crisis ended. The Galactic Concord Station looked different now. It was bigger, busier, and more diverse. New species joined every month. Trade routes expanded, peace held firm, and everywhere, in every corner of the station, beings talked about humans. In a quiet bar on the lower levels, Ambassador Quilara sat with a group of young diplomats from various species. They were new to the Concord, eager to learn, full of questions. And they all wanted to hear the stories. Is it true? A young crone asked, her scales shimmering with excitement. Did Captain Jiwan really board a pirate flagship alone and defeat their warlord? Quilara smiled, her serpentine body coiling comfortably. Not quite alone. She had 6 soldiers with her. But yes, they captured Warlord Kragath in less than an hour. I saw the recordings. It was remarkable. An engineer, Yuna? Another delegate asked. They say she can build anything from nothing. I watched her fix our life support with parts that shouldn't have been compatible, Quilara said. And on Keth 7, she disabled an ancient defense system using only mechanical tools. The humans call it improvising. We call it magic. The young diplomats leaned forward, hungry for more stories. Quilara obliged, telling them about the humans who survived on Keth 7 without technology, about the battle against the Devourers, about Dr. Minho negotiating with an ancient AI. But surely some of these stories are exaggerated, a luminary diplomat said skeptically. No species can be that capable. That's what we all thought at first, Quilara replied. I was there when they arrived. I remember how we looked down on them. Young species, primitive technology, violent history. We were so wrong. So the stories are true? The young Kron asked. Most of them, a familiar voice said from behind them. Ambassador Tejo had entered the bar unnoticed. He smiled at the group. Though I suspect they've gotten more dramatic with each retelling. The young diplomat stood quickly, showing respect. Tejo waved for them to sit. Please continue. I enjoy hearing what people say about us when we're not around. Ambassador, the skeptical luminary said carefully. Why do humans seem so prepared for everything? Tejo sat down, ordering a drink before answering. That's a good question. The truth is we're not prepared for everything. We just don't let that stop us. I don't understand, the young crone said. Humans spent thousands of years facing impossible challenges, Tejo explained. We lived on a world that tried to kill us daily. We fought wars against ourselves. We survived plagues, famines, natural disasters. Every generation faced something that should have destroyed us. But we learned something important. You don't need to be prepared for everything. You just need to adapt when things go wrong. And when you say we've got it covered? Quilara asked with a knowing smile. Tejo laughed. That phrase has taken on a life of its own, hasn't it? It started as simple confidence. Now it's become something bigger. It's become hope, the luminary said quietly. When I hear those words now, I believe them. The stories were everywhere now. In the training halls, Captain Jiwan taught mixed species security forces human combat techniques. Her classes were always full. Students from a dozen different species learned how to fight efficiently, how to think tactically, how to never give up. The key, Jiwan told her latest class, is not to be the biggest or strongest. It's to be the smartest and most determined. Fight with your brain first, your body second. A Kron student raised his hand. But Captain, your species is physically weaker than many of ours. How do you compensate? Jiwan smiled. By being unpredictable, by using the environment, by never fighting fair if we can help it. We learned long ago that honor doesn't matter if you're dead. In the engineering section, Yuna ran workshops on creative problem solving. Alien engineers who had relied on advanced technology their whole lives learned to think differently. What if you don't have the right parts? Yuna asked the class. What if your equipment fails? What if you're stranded on a primitive world? Then we would die, a luminary engineer admitted. We saw what happened to our people on Keth 7. You wouldn't die if you learned to improvise, Yuna said. Technology is wonderful, but it's not everything. The real tool is up here, she tapped her head. Learn to see solutions where others see problems. Learn to use what you have, not what you wish you had. Dr. Minho established a cultural exchange program that became wildly popular. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn about human history, philosophy, art, and literature. They wanted to understand what made humans tick. Human culture is complicated, Minho told a packed lecture hall. We have thousands of different cultures on one planet. We fought wars over ideas. We created beauty in the midst of tragedy. We never stopped trying to be better even when we failed. Is that why you're so resilient? Someone asked. Maybe, Minho said. Or maybe it's just stubbornness. We humans don't like being told something is impossible. It makes us want to prove people wrong. Admiral Sunhee worked with conquered military forces, coordinating joint defense exercises. The admiral's reputation had grown immense. Some species called her the greatest military mind in galactic history. She dismissed such praise. I'm just a soldier who's been lucky. The real strength isn't me. It's the humans who serve under me and the allies who trust us enough to fight beside us. One evening, Council Speaker Vexthar requested a private meeting with Ambassador Tejo. They met in Vexthar's office high in the station's central tower. Through the window they could see ships coming and going, carrying the commerce and culture of 1,000 worlds. I owe you an apology, Vexthar said without preamble. When you arrived, I thought you were primitives playing at civilization. I was wrong. Completely wrong, Tejo shook his head. You weren't wrong to be cautious. We were unknown, untested. You had every right to doubt us. But that's what puzzles me, Vexthar said, his crystalline face reflecting the starlight. How does a species so young become so capable? What is it about humans that makes you succeed where older, more advanced species fail? Tejo was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. I think it's because we had to be. Your species developed advanced technology quickly. You solved problems with intelligence and innovation. But you rarely faced true existential threats. And humans did? Constantly, Tejo said. Earth tried to kill us with weather, disease, predators, starvation. We almost destroyed ourselves in wars more times than I can count. We faced extinction dozens of times. Each time we survived by being tough, creative, and stubborn. It became part of what we are. So your strength comes from hardship, Vexthar said slowly. Not just hardship, Tejo corrected. It comes from surviving hardship. From refusing to give up. From learning that impossible just means difficult. When we say we've got it covered, we mean it. Not because we're arrogant, but because we've solved impossible problems before. We'll do it again. Vexthar gazed out at the stars. Your species has changed the Concord in 1 year more than we've changed in centuries. You've made us braver, stronger, more willing to face challenges instead of running from them. We learned from you too, Tejo said. Your technology, your cooperation, your commitment to peace. We're all growing together. The conversation was interrupted by an alert. A new signal had been detected from the far edge of the galaxy. Unknown source. Possible threat. Vexthar looked at Tejo with concern. Another crisis. So soon after the last, Tejo smiled his calm smile and stood. Then we'll handle it. Together. The Concord isn't the same organization it was a year ago. You're not the same leader. Your people aren't the same either. You've learned. We've all learned. But if this new threat is as dangerous as the Devourers, Tejo placed a hand on Vexthar's crystalline shoulder. Then we've got it covered. This time Vexthar smiled too. He believed it. As Tejo left the office, he passed groups of mixed species workers chatting in the hallways. He heard fragments of conversation, stories about humans, tales that were already becoming legends. Some stories were accurate. Others had grown in the telling. All of them shared one thing. They spoke of humans who faced the impossible and won. Not through magic or superior technology, but through determination, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The legends were real now. They walked among the aliens, teaching them, learning from them, protecting them. The humans who had arrived as uncertain newcomers had become the heroes the galaxy needed. In bars and meeting halls, in ships and stations across 1,000 worlds, beings of every species repeated the phrase that had come to symbolize hope itself. We've got it covered. And everyone who heard those words believed them. Because the humans always delivered. They always would. The legends had come alive. And they were just getting started. The end.